WWE Developmental NXT.
Welcome, everybody, to Wrestling to the Max's NXT for this week. And boy, do we have an interesting one to talk about. Of course, this is NXT following TakeOver San Antonio. And, of course, this is going to be also a show that you're going to want to also talk about later on with your friends. So how do you tell them about it? Well, go check out the W2Mnet.com is how you tell them about it. Go and endorse that. Make sure you let them know that's where they can find a lot of their great content that we offer. Of course, we have not only NXT we do, but we also do 205 Live, Raw, SmackDown Live, all those great shows, plus our normal episodes of Wrestling to the Max every week. Also, W2M Network is the place you go subscribe if you just want to go check out iTunes or whatever place you go check out podcasts. Make sure you go to the W2M Network, and that's where you find us. I'm your host tonight, Gary Vaughan, and of course with me is Mr. Paul Leazar.
Hey-o.
And boy, Paul, we got an interesting one to talk about, so why don't we go ahead and do it? Let's talk about this NXT.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive right on in. It should be mentioned, first of all, that these were taped before the NXT San Antonio event, so you get to see all these in the Freeman Coliseum. And they opened the show with highlights from NXT TakeOver San Antonio, which you haven't watched yet. I highly recommend. It was wonderful. And, yeah, all the other good superlatives that come with it. We're talking about a TakeOver show. And then we quickly cut to Ember Moon taking on Aaliyah. I actually got to see this at the house show in Dallas in a much longer form, but this is pretty good. And I still think you get the same vibe, right? Aaliyah has come very far in a short way of time, which seems to be, you know, the something we always talk about whenever somebody really steps forward as far as their progress in NXT, because they either wash out pretty quickly or they get good really quickly, and Aaliyah has gotten good very quickly in my opinion. Ember Moon, of course, does go over here with the Eclipse, but I really enjoyed this for what it was. Nice little 3-minute match, really gets you going.
Yeah, and, you know, these matches we're going to talk about tonight are nothing where it's super impactful to anything. It really just kind of, I hate to say filler, but it's something where you get a chance to see a match between maybe someone that's not exactly the big feud in the future, but at least it's a good match. And this is one of those matches where you can say, this is really cool to see because, like you just pointed out, Paul, Aaliyah has definitely come a long way. I mean, she was on, I forget the name of the show they had. What was it, Breakout or?
Was she on Tough Enough?
I don't know if she was on Tough Enough. I thought she was on that other show. Was she not one of the young ladies that was a part of the show that was behind the scenes in NXT? I can't even, Breaking Ground.
I don't remember if she was on Breaking Ground or not. It's been a long time since I watched that.
She may not have been, but she has been around. Mm-hmm. And we've seen her on NXT television, so even if she wasn't on Breaking Ground, I just thought someone like her was on it. But just the evolution and what she's done. We talk about Liv Morgan all the time, right? And how she's kind of come to a certain point where she's so much better than she once was, and she's still got room to grow, but she's definitely at that point. I think Aaliyah is too, and I think this match kind of proves it because of the fact that you've seen the growth, and especially against someone like Ember Moon, who, you know, is just a giant indie star coming into WWE, but I mean, she's well established. She's someone who knows her way around the ring. It's just a positive vibe here. I really appreciate it. And I think it's kind of cool that you kind of have that perspective because you did see this live. You saw it in a longer format. So, I mean, just saying it that way and looking at that, Paul, I mean, how did Aaliyah do in that match in a longer format? I mean, did she really kind of prove more to you?
I mean, I think it was the same idea that you get in this one. It's just shortened. I'd say the match they got in at NXT Dallas before San Antonio was about 7 to 8 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. And Aaliyah really got a chance to dominate a good portion of that match. And really, I mean, they worked a lot of rest holds, obviously. But I think Aaliyah has these nice little short bursts. And she has a beautiful German suplex, too, by the way. I don't think that can be ever shorted because it's such an awesome move. But you get to see, I think, so much more of what she can do. And she's not the super high flyer like Ember Moon is, or even that same, I think, infectious personality that Liv Morgan has. But Aaliyah is very, very solid, and somebody who I think might have the possibility of turning into a great all-rounder who can really work with anybody if she keeps this track of progress going. Obviously, I don't know if she can maintain the same progression at the same rate because that would just be ridiculous. But certainly there's a future down the line for her to where she can work with pretty much anybody, and that's, I think, something not only the NXT women's roster needs, but the main roster can never have enough of, is somebody who can really do everything.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, over the Royal Rumble weekend, we saw a guy enter the Royal Rumble who was part of NXT for what? How many years? It was forever. Ty Dillinger, right? And he was just that version on the NXT roster, right, for the males. He was there. He was the guy that anybody could work with. He's just super that talented. And, you know, I hope that Aaliyah kind of matches that for the women's part of this. And I hope that she's able to kind of follow that format. Now, hopefully she don't get stuck in NXT that long if she really is good. But saying all that, that's really cool to see someone evolve to their point. And, you know, jumping over to Ember Moon, and I don't want to steal your thunder if you're probably going to talk about these promos pretty soon here, but I do like on this NXT, you get a match from her, and then you also kind of take you on to the whole Asuka thing in this, in a way, because they interview both Asuka and her.
Right, and let's just go ahead and swim on through that. Like, right after that match, we get highlights from Dillinger's debut in the Royal Rumble, as well as his match with Eric Young from TakeOver, which was a very good opener. And, yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about a guy who's made the most of his most recent chance, and somebody who's been in the system for so long, even before NXT was around, back when Florida Championship Wrestling was around, and back when Deep South Wrestling, was around, guy who has been in the system for so long and has also worked at his fair share of indies as well, finally get that big chance at the Royal Rumble coming out at 10. I'd love to see some backstage video of him getting ready for that and just how amped he was, because that had to be a really special moment for him. And then we look at the NXT Women's Championship situation, where we get some highlights of the four-way match at NXT TakeOver San Antonio. Asuka then gets to comment on her win, as well as not knowing who Ember Moon was and sort of being surprised that there's even a person by that name working in NXT, which got a little bit of a laugh from me. And then Ember Moon gets the interview, and she wants to be the one to beat Asuka, and wants Asuka to know who she is whenever that battle is over. And I mean, this even from TakeOver San Antonio, and even before that, even way back at the November, October of last year, whenever Ember Moon shows up and the tear she's been on, you could tell this was the way they were going to go. Ember Moon is undefeated. Asuka is undefeated. You have a meet at the WrestleMania weekend takeover in Orlando, and boy, you have yourself a super hot women's title match that you can really bank on to draw.
Yeah, this is exciting already, and this is what I love about it, because I think we've talked about some of the, even on the main roster and even on NXT at some point, there's some of these matches we've seen that have not had a big fight feel, right? Where you kind of go in, you feel like you're kind of going a little cold or a little lukewarm into it, but you're supposed to be excited about it. And this is one that, man, I feel like they're already turning the temperature up on it. Mm-hmm. And they've alluded to it before this, but now it's starting to pick up that steam and that heat. And already with these, two short promos, or nothing, super long about them. They were not super impactful, but for what they were, they are a good start to the ignition of this feud, and to really get them amped up to go somewhere. And I know people are probably saying I'm overhyping, and I'm really not trying to. I'm just telling you how impressed I am with how they're handling it. I think there's so many times that they don't handle it this way, and I think they're just being really, really smart on how they're doing this, especially with a women's title with Asuka, who's so dominant. Really, they don't have an opportunity to do this, really, because most of the people she's facing are people who kind of, besides Mickie James, are just kind of like, oh, Asuka's probably going to win. And I think Mickie James was the closest to, we may have thought Asuka was going to win, but Mickie James was a big, huge danger to what Asuka was. So, but say I'm going on and on and on. But my point about this is I really appreciate the way that, they had Asuka kind of act like she didn't know who Ember Moon was and do all that, even if she really does. But I just think that's kind of a play off of, she doesn't really matter. And for Ember Moon and for someone I haven't really got a chance to hear on the mic a whole lot, I think she did fine. I think she kind of stood there and really presented herself very well. So I was appreciative of how this whole thing is going.
I liked this interview a lot better than what they did with her on the pre-show on the TakeOver show, where she looked very much out of her element and somebody who was a little lost at times on the microphone, but her poise and her message were still there. So obviously there's some tuning up there. And when you're on the indies, and if you never make it to somebody who has television, you don't really get a big chance to flex your promo muscle or anything like that. So I think that's just fair criticism for where she's at right now, and something to certainly work on. And I guess to sort of tie a bow on this, we're actually only like 8 or 9 weeks away from WrestleMania. So for them to get the ball rolling this early is a good sign, and showing that they really need to start getting going towards that NXT TakeOver Orlando, which hopefully will be a super big show for these guys like Dallas was last year.
Oh, exactly. And I'm really looking at it and thinking to myself, they have that great opportunity to do just as well as they did in Dallas. And I know we're trying to move on past this, but I just got to ask you this question. As someone who has actually seen Ember Moon and seen Ember Moon, I'm sure you saw a little bit of her work on the indie circuit. How do you think that those two will fare and match up? I mean, this is already feeling like a great fight, but I mean, just give me a sneak preview of what I could expect.
So, I mean, to sort of, I guess, educate out there, Ember Moon actually came up here in Dallas, and she worked a lot of Texas early on, and especially Anarchy Championship Wrestling out in Austin. They had a good crop of women's wrestlers come into them, and they ended up creating the American Joshi title, which she held multiple times, and that's what got her noticed by Shimmer, and that's what got her to Shimmer, and had all these amazing matches with Mia, with Jade, Mia Yim, and several others all across her time in Shimmer. And she's such a talented worker, and somebody who can, I think, really legitimately go blow for blow and move for move with Asuka and really make something special. And I mean, I don't know if Asuka's had that single standout blow away match that, I guess Mickie James would be the closest. To really seeing what she can do just straight up one-on-one. But certainly, I think Ember Moon can give her a good run for her money, and maybe even help her break that super great match barrier that we're all waiting for. And certainly there's a lot of those prospects waiting for Asuka on the main roster wherever she ends up. But yeah, I mean, Ember Moon, Athena, whatever you want to call her, certainly worth your time to look up on the interwebs if you're bored.
Yeah, I'm excited, and you just got me even more excited about this. So, well, 8 weeks can't come soon enough. However long it is to WrestleMania.
Yeah. Let's move on to this next match, which I would love to see so much more of in the future. But Tyler Bate, the WWE United Kingdom Champion, was flown in to work this show here, and he matches up with Oney Lorcan, the former Biff Busick, and boy, oh boy, there are some flashes of chemistry that I think leap off the screen at you. But ultimately, this is a way for them to show Tyler Bate off to the crowd here at NXT TakeOver and to the regular NXT fans who maybe has skipped out on the UK tournament or whatever else you haven't seen of him. And boy, it's a solid 5-6 minutes, right? And I'm sure I'm way overhyping what it actually was, but this needs to be something that happens more often. If Tyler Bate even if it's only for a couple shows here and there across NXT TV until the UK ball gets rolling, I would certainly be up for him and Oney Lorcan just beating the piss out of each other.
I think it was pretty well presented. I think they did a pretty good job here, and I can't help it. I laugh when I watch this guy. Not that he's not a bad writer. He's definitely a great talent, but just the way he goes about his in-ring work, and I perceive it as a kind of comedy wrestling in a bit, like him getting hit the ropes and coming back and doing what is that the wheel kick or the I'm blanking on the name of the soccer guy. He comes back and hits Oni, and I just love that move, and it was just hilarious. And he was shocked that he did it. That's the look on his face was hilarious, and it kind of has a parallel to Jack Gallagher to an extent, but without being Jack Gallagher, of course. So I appreciate that, and it's probably a British thing. I'm not like you, Paul. I really haven't had an opportunity to sit there and watch a lot of British wrestling, so I'm probably out of my ballpark even saying anything about it. But I just think this guy is really, really exciting. He's kind of fun. He's just a different cat. He really is. He's something that NXT has not seen. And I think that's very important, and so it's kind of cool to have him on this. I know he's going to be doing other things other places, but hey, anytime that they want to bring him on board and let him do some things in front of the NXT crowd, I think it's going to be exciting for the crowd, but I think it's also going to be kind of fun to watch him kind of progress and kind of also interact with some of these NXT stars that we kind of have already established in front of an American audience. So it's good. I think this was a good little match they had here.
Yeah, and I guess just to sort of expand on Tyler Bate, I mean, the Gallagher reference I think is more than warranted, but Gallagher obviously is getting over more based on the gimmick rather than his moveset. And not to say that Tyler Bate doesn't have a great gimmick where he's just this lovable rascal, but wrestling-wise, he's very much a blend of a lot of old-school British techniques mixed with the sort of the much newer British quote-unquote strong style thing that has taken over really the UK indie scene, and I think he's the perfect example of it. I mean, Pete Dunne is another good one too, but certainly Tyler Bate, with as young as he is and having those callbacks not only to old school, UK wrestling, World of Sport, whatnot, but certainly American as well. You see it in the airplane spin and some of the leg work and other moves that he really focuses on, but. The striking and the Tyler Driver, obviously, which is with Tiger Driver, but certainly there's a lot of parallels to strong style here too. So I mean, Tyler Bate, I think is a nice, perfect blend of everything that the UK is sort of about right now, and I think that's what makes him such a great, perfect first champion. Not only because he's a lovable babyface and you have so many people chase him and try to prove him wrong, or hey, you're only 19 and inexperienced and whatever else you want to go with, but. He's a great representation of what's going on over there right now.
Yeah, and that's exciting. See, and that's another thing I love about this because, for fans who do watch NXT and really get excited about things, this is an awesome moment to educate them. Like me, guys like me who just don't get out of my, wheelhouse besides American wrestling, right? Guys who are not always watching Japanese or British wrestling, and I think this is important. It's a great education, and you're getting it right there on NXT every week, and that's really cool. And so when guys like this do, show up, it's fun. And just to kind of touch back on Gallagher, I think Gallagher is really fun for his own way, like you pointed out. It's more about the gimmick, and the guy also wrestles completely different. He's more of, from what I'm seeing, a chain wrestler, and it's about grapples, holds, and just being that, guy of 1,001 holds. And that's what's cool about Jack Al. Is that these two guys matched up, you wouldn't be like, oh, these guys are twins. No, they have completely different styles. So that's what's great about them. These two guys could actually get in the ring together and things like that. And it wouldn't be kind of these guys are alike. So I just referenced them because of the goofiness, the what we would perceive as being silly here. And that's what's fun. So, but they're both lovable. I love both. And Tyler Bate, I'm glad they got him over here for this NXT San Antonio show because I think it's important to keep, that UK title in front of our face. Because it's easy to forget about it if it's not here.
Exactly. And if Gallagher and Tyler Bate ever do match up, the only thing you're really going to need, Gary, is a pair of sunglasses because that pastiness level is going to be off the charts.
They should just have me ref the match with no shirt, and we'll really be blinded. We will all be like, "Oh God, the greenhouse effect." Anyway,
keep Sheamus at ringside. Like you could do some stuff here.
Oh boy, ooh, timekeeper.
Yeah. We get more highlights from TakeOver following this match. Roderick Strong's match with Almas, and then his promo where he's saying his win is a statement win, and now he's looking at the NXT Championship. You get interviews with the Authors of Pain, who captured the NXT Tag Team titles from #DIY at TakeOver, and you get highlights of that match as well. And then you get clips of the Glorious One, Bobby Roode, and his fantastic title win over Shinsuke Nakamura. There was so many people just didn't get a lot of the booking at TakeOver, but things are moving along here, right? And then the best thing I think is you get backstage with Nakamura, who is being held backstage, and then they set him on the chair and he's all down, and you have Cassius Ohno, Chris Hero kind of hang out in the back, sort of consoling him a little bit. And then we get comments from Roode saying that now that he's the champion, he will demand all the respect, and it is time to remake NXT in his image and create his own era, and it will be glorious, Gary. It will be glorious.
And notice he whispered it. He didn't even say it real loud. He just kind of whispered glorious.
And
that's
so
all you need.
I'm just too hyped. Yeah.
I know you're on the glorious train, and that's great. I mean, I am too. I love Bobby Roode, everything about this guy, and with him becoming NXT champion, it makes me even more excited. And it's for the reason that we could have so many great matchups with this guy. I've really looked at Bobby Roode as, man, he's done great at what he's done beforehand, before coming over to NXT with TNA. He was a big deal, and just everywhere he's ever gone, he's just been one of those top guys that everyone loves to watch in the ring. And so this is really great. I think this is a great opportunity for NXT, especially if Nakamura is going to move on. I don't know that for a fact, but if he is moving on sooner than later, this is a great champion to have, and definitely, just showing right there in that interview about who he is, what he's all about. I love that too, because, I always take for granted the fact that, we watch a lot of wrestling and we kind of know some of these guys from different places like Impact Wrestling and even Ring of Honor. And for a new audience, I kind of looked at their eyes sometimes. And for an audience who just watches WWE, I think this is just a perfect, just right here, this is something you could kind of tie in a bow as well and say, that's who he is. That's Bobby Roode right there. You don't need to watch all those impacts. You don't need to watch anything else. There he is. And that's what's so cool about it. So I'm glad they did that. The Nakamura thing was really cool because you did get a chance to see Chris Hero without actually seeing him in the ring. So that's exciting for fans who remember Cassius Ohno. And they were still calling him Cassius Ohno. They call him Chris Hero now. I did not remember. Did they even mention his name in that little segment there?
No, they didn't. They haven't mentioned him at all. And on the little YouTube video that they made after the last set of tapings before San Antonio, they had Cassius Ohno come out in a dark segment and sort of confront Nakamura, and they play the Cassius Ohno music and all that good stuff. So
Okay.
it looks like he's taken up the old mantle that he had.
Okay. Gosh darn it! Just let him keep Chris Hero. But anyway, it just annoys me because I'm like, he's proven to you he deserves his name. But anyway, before I get on my high horse, I do want to also kind of touch on those other two segments you talked about. The Authors of Pain, it's good that they had a little segment here, keep them, in people's thoughts and minds. And the Roderick Strong thing to me is the most important thing because he's already talking about a major title run, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, he's a veteran. I guess you could say he kind of deserves being that echelon, but I think that, it's a pretty quick move. But maybe that's what they want. Maybe they want him to come in there, fight Bobby Roode, and then Bobby Roode move on. I don't know. I'm kind of interested, though. I'll to be honest with you, I'm very interested in them throwing his name in that hat this fast. I don't know.
Good. I think it works out extremely well to have Roderick be that first challenger because, one, he's sort of in that same vein as Shinsuke, right, where he's this sort of hard-hitting wrestler and all these other things, and he's so opposite of what Bobby Roode is. And there are a lot of other guys in NXT who are faces right now, looking at Roderick Strong, looking at DIY, looking at a bunch of these other people who are so wrapped up in the independent image of being great wrestlers and hard strikers and high flyers and everything else. And Bobby Roode is very much a throwback to the old school style of, the old school Southern heel stuff, Ric Flair, Triple H, the guys who really were good wrestlers, but took you to that next level based on the level of storytelling they could do in the ring with practically anybody on the roster, no matter what they could do, no matter their size, whatever other qualifier you want to put on there. So I think that's what makes the Bobby Roode NXT title run so interesting, is that on the face side of the paradigm here, you have all those guys that you could literally line up and have them run through one after the other in an attempt to try to make sure that he's not only coupled with great wrestlers, but he's coupled with somebody who's so completely opposite. And the story of the Glorious era is going to be this huge thing, I think, for NXT. And certainly when you talk next level, I think it's that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. And I think that this is going to be an exciting match whenever it does happen. I'm sure, like you said, it's probably going to be his first match. It's going to be really good. I don't doubt that at all. I mean, just on paper, it's beautiful. I just was thinking about to myself are they going to do that whole 8-week push, of this is their feud. They're gonna go back and forth until they finally do get to take over Orlando. And I think it's fine if they do that. It's just interesting to me because, as we've said in the past, Roderick Strong is not the best guy on the mic. So I think to myself, how are you going to stretch it out that long? If you get what I'm saying. And I think they can, but to me, it's going to be a more difficult path because I just don't know if Roderick Strong is going to sell anybody on, oh gosh, I'm really angry and I'm really going to, and I'm going to do this and this and this. I think they're going to have to be really methodical on how they're going to do this, especially with a big match as it is so far out from here, you know. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at it in a negative way, but I love the matchup. I just worry about getting to the matchup.
I think that it's certainly with merit, but when you look at the other side of the coin in Bobby Roode, who I think could carry anybody to a passable segment with his microphone ability, and I think we sell Roderick kind of short sometimes. There are times, especially if you go back in Ring of Honor's heyday, where he is just nails on a chalkboard bad. He's gotten better. He's gotten a lot better, and certainly passable enough to where I think he could carry a feud. And it's not like, every week on NXT we're going to have Bobby Roode and Roderick Strong, if that is what they choose to go with at NXT TakeOver Orlando as the main event. We're not going to have that in our face every week. So I certainly think there's enough room in here to carry it out 8 weeks, 9 weeks, however long it is from where we are right now. But I think that's certainly a very valid concern and something that, they're here in NXT to grow those skills, right? So I would really love to see Roderick Strong just blow us away with all this.
I completely agree with you. Because, I think I'm going to be sitting here in a few weeks and be like, good God, what was I thinking? This guy is doing just fine. He's going to, have a promo that's just out of this world, and I'm going to be sitting here looking silly. And I hope so. But like you said, it's so easy to forget. this is technically a developmental brand, and I kind of sometimes ignore that because we've gotten such great quality of wrestling, such a great quality even on the mic with the promos and segments and all that. So it's easy sometimes to forget that these people are here for a reason, and they're learning, they're getting bigger education, they're learning the WWE way of doing things, honestly. Right. Because Roderick Strong, my God, he could be at WrestleMania tomorrow. That's not the problem. It's if he wants to be on Raw or SmackDown, he's got to learn how the WWE does it, not how Ring of Honor does it. So
exactly.
But yeah, I love this whole thing. This is just the fact that we've already got done with NXT San Antonio, and now we're already just in one night, pretty much setting up what we're going to be seeing. TakeOver Orlando.
Absolutely. And now, from talks of looking towards the future, somebody else who's leaving NXT for brighter lights and certainly more accolades than he absolutely deserves. Corey Graves gets a video package talking about his time in NXT, both as a wrestler, what happened to him with all of his concussions and how he transitioned into announcer. And boy, they tug at your heartstrings a little bit here because, obviously he wanted to be here as a wrestler, and he kind of got put into a position to where he couldn't do that anymore, and he transitioned into a super successful announcer, and probably the heir apparent to being the next, top color commentator in the WWE. And, they sort of send him out, giving you his final moments, and then he buries the Drifter, which is wonderful, because he's got a matchup with No Way Jose, and No Way Jose fortunately beats him in about 7 minutes. And that's about it.
I want to touch on the Drifter thing. I thought it was hilarious. He says, "Oh, thank God I don't have to see this guy again." And was it Percy Watson or Phil? I think it was Philip said, "Are you sure about that?" He goes, "Yeah, I know things. I won't." So that is awesome. I feel bad for, the guy who plays the Drifter, but I just think to myself, this guy knows that's not going to get past Vince. There's no way that's going to move on. He may move on without that, character, but yeah, I love that. And this match is really there just entertainment purposes. And not only that, this is kind of a mini feud, if you'll say it that way. For No Way Jose, so it was good stuff, solid. You get a chance to see No Way Jose dance and all that, so that's what's cool about this. I do want to focus on what you were talking about. This video package was great, and it was exciting to see all those behind the scene things that really you'd never got put in front of your face. And I love that they have video of him, actually kind of doing the confession booth type thing. And I'm sure some of those are probably from him doing them at the Performance Center when he's maybe practicing promos or whatever he's doing. He's probably just kind of used it as a confessional in a way. And that's awesome they have that. Because you get to see his raw emotion at that moment or at that time in his life. And it was just so, so cool to see. And just to see a guy who had worked his entire life to get to NXT, to get to WWE, and just for his whole career to be cut short in the ring, but for him to grab on and take that next opportunity that was in front of him and run with it. I mean, you really look at it, and when I first, and I'll be honest with you, when I first heard that Corey Graves was going to be an announcer and he was going to be a part of the announce team for NXT, I had my worries. And it was because I was never really a giant Corey Graves fan as a wrestler. Mm-hmm. Even on the mic, I was just not big into Corey Graves. I just kind of thought, I kind of always looked at him as a CM Punk light. And that's unfair, but that's just the image I had at that moment. And boy, this guy, they even show it in the video package, him talking about how he practiced and practiced and practiced. He has come so far. This is a giant loss for NXT. Mm-hmm. A giant loss. And we'll talk about who's replacing him in a second here. But I get it. They don't really need him. This is a place where they, like we said, this is developmental. They'll bring other guys in to announce and to be, in that place. But the main roster, of course, Raw, I mean, they've got their guy. He's going to be there for a long, long time unless he decides he wants to leave. Or he really pisses someone off. But I just think this guy's so great at his job. He's just, to me, the best announcer besides, if you want to say, a Michael Cole or someone like that. I just love this guy. So it's really cool how NXT developed him into that, to where we see him at that level now. So that's exciting. I'm really proud for the guy, and I think it's super cool.
I think when it comes to your options at color commentator, JBL, Jerry the King Lawler, David Otunga, whoever else they have on Raw these days, who's blanking with me with Michael Cole now. Saxton, yeah, thank you. It's not even close to being a race. Like, Corey Graves is at the finish line, like having a beer, already cooling down, and everybody else is still running the race. He's that good at his job. And you look at the announcers and Michael Cole and Mauro Ranallo and, the other guy, Tom Phillips, whoever else they have in the wings now. There's not a lot left as far as who you could put on NXT. And with Michael Cole maybe trying to step away from the announce table on Raw and looking at what you would have left for NXT, Percy Watson and whoever else, because I'm sure Tom Phillips would be moved to Raw if they want to keep Mauro on SmackDown, which I hope they do. You don't have a lot left for a commentary table that really leaves you hyped to think, man, we're going to get some good calls tonight, or boy, this is going to be good. And, the commentary isn't going to be a problem like it has been on the main roster for so long. Mm-hmm. That's a significant worry, because I think that's been such a great part of NXT, is that the announcing crew for the last 3-4 years has been super solid, whether you're looking at Tom Phillips and whoever else is on the other side of him, or Corey Graves, or I really miss Rich Brennan. I loved him on NXT commentary too, and it's such a shame that they got rid of him. But, I mean, we could be looking at some dark times on NXT commentary here, Gary.
Yeah, and especially if you're Sean. Because Nigel McGuinness is that guy stepping in for Corey Graves, and I know that's not making a lot of people thrilled or happy. And, I've never been a big Nigel fan, but I get it. You're paying the guy. You might as well have to do something, right? Especially since you don't have a UK show right now. So at this moment right now, he's stepping into play, and, he's an old veteran. He's a guy that, honestly, he can give you a lot of insights on a lot of this talent, because he's actually wrestled a lot of the guys that are going to be on NXT. But at the same point, I do agree with you. There is a little bit of a worry factor, because Nigel McGuinness is really not the future. At least I don't feel that way. I think that there's other guys that are coming up, and you mentioned Brennan, and I think there's a few other guys out there that we've seen come through and who've done really good jobs, or they really weren't that great, and it's kind of a, it's just, you're just throwing darts, and you're just hoping you make it, hoping you get the right guy to entertain the crowd, to tell the story of what's happening in the ring, and they, have some great talent, but you do worry because you do have your David Otunga. Those guys are just kind of, just stop talking, because they're just not. They try to put them in that place. They're just not that great at what they do, and you just kind of feel bad for them. But Corey Graves was that guy that you're like, they found a diamond in the rough on accident.
Yeah.
Just let's be honest, that was on accident. That was never planned. So let's hope that they do. Let's hope that they find more guys on accident, and we'll see in the future. But yeah, Nigel McGuinness does not really thrill me. But I guess it's better than somebody coming on who's just really green, if I can say it that way.
No, yeah, I think that's the bonus I think you get with Nigel being here. And I'm sure until they get the UK deal going, because I'm sure he's going to be on the commentary team for all that's going on over there whenever that finally launches. But at least as far as NXT is concerned right now, you have somebody who's experienced, who's done a lot of commentary in his past, and can do color reasonably well. I'm not going to say he's great at it, but I think he's good enough to get the job done for now. And then on NXT, I think that's all you're really looking for is good enough. And we've just been spoiled, I think, with Corey Graves, and him and Tom Phillips have great chemistry, in my opinion, too. So there's a lot going on over there that you're going to have to try to cover, and he's leaving behind some awfully big shoes. And I don't know if there's any combination of guys who can really fill it.
Yeah, definitely. And, another guy we didn't even mention in this mix who, like Nigel McGuinness, left Ring of Honor, is Steve Corino. Mm-hmm. And, he's another guy, I think, that if Nigel McGuinness did have to head over to the UK and do that thing, Corino could move in that spot and at least fill it until maybe they wanted to do something different. But I've always enjoyed Corino. He gets a little goofy.
Yeah, I was really hoping it was going to be Corino who was filling the shoes. His last couple of years, as far as Ring of Honor commentary, have been superb, and he's just a funny guy. And it might just be because in Ring of Honor he could have all these storyline interactions work in with him, and that was great too. But I certainly think you could do stuff with him in NXT to that same fashion, and he's legitimately a funny guy at times, so I think that's something I'm going to miss. It's the same with Corey Graves. Corey Graves is funny, and Nigel doesn't exactly bring that to the table, if you ask me.
No, you're not at all. He's more of the scientific, this is why this works, that kind of stuff, instead of making a joke about the guy. This is the exact science behind So exactly. You're just kind of like, yeah, let's move on to something more entertaining than just hearing the point of a drop kick or something. But we'll see. I mean, this is what's cool about this whole thing is there is a future for a lot of these guys, and you have to just accept it with NXT. You're going to lose people. That's just the way it works, and it's fine. We will get on, and I'm sure in the future there'll be a new guy step in, and we're like, oh, thank God he's here. So, and the only real quick argument I'm going to make with you is I love Mauro Ranallo on SmackDown, but I would love to hear him for 3 hours instead of hearing, I don't know, Tom Phillips is fine, but I just love Mauro Ranallo. I think you'd help me on Raw.
I think that's fair. I think the way SmackDown's presented, though, works more to his strengths. Whereas you look at Raw, Tom Phillips is very much somebody who was built in that same Michael Cole image, and I certainly think that's why he's going to get that main chair over there on Raw. Plus, he's been with the company for so long. I think he's been groomed to be that heir apparent to Michael Cole, and he already has the chemistry with Corey Graves to work over there too. And you could take or leave Byron, and personally, I'd love to see you just boot him off the table. That'd be great, but I don't think we're going to get that. It's the same. I think SmackDown would be infinitely better if it was just JBL and Morrow. I think they'd be quite good together, and you sort of have David Otunga in there just gumming up the works, and I don't know. Obviously it's just me over here talking, but that would be how I would like to see things done.
I miss the two-man booth. I really do. I think it helps so much, and you didn't have so much chatter. You can actually sit and watch some of the match, and then hear every once in a while comment here or there, instead of the entire time it's like hey, I got to get my stuff in. Shut up, But yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, we'll have to see how things do shake out in the WWE. But this was NXT. I think that was it, right, Paul? I'm not
That's
missing
it.
anything.
No,
All right,
that's it.
so. Well, we appreciate everybody for coming and checking us out tonight. We hope we gave you all the information that you wanted to hear about, and of course, we'll have more great content when it comes to NXT next week. Don't forget to go check out all our other review shows like Raw, SmackDown Live, and 205 Live. That's right, we do all those shows, and you can go check them out on W2Mnet.com as well. If you maybe want to subscribe through your whatever you use, like iTunes, go subscribe to the W2M Network. You can get all our content immediately in your dock. As soon as you update it, it will be right there, ready for you to listen to. And also, don't forget, Wrestling to the Max. We do 2 episodes a week. We'll be doing part 1 on Tuesday nights. Of course, that will be available on Wednesday morning. And of course, on Friday morning on the download will be our part 2 shows. So please go check those out. And of course, we thank you once again for joining us tonight. Until next time, we will see you guys down the road.
Have a good one, guys.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.